Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we are diving into, it's essentially a blueprint for reality. The source material we're looking at is the complete foundational canon of the Ghosts universe. And it lays out this incredibly structured architecture for existence. It starts from a single, unshakable point inside you and just expands outward.
It's a remarkable piece of work, really. And our mission today for you is to just walk through this framework layer by layer. It's designed to show how you can feel reality step by step. It's like a map that starts at your inner center and goes all the way to the far horizon of awareness.
An internal roadmap, but for everything. So we're going to track the source's entire sequence today. That journey starts at the core with what they call the dot. Then it moves into the ways we experience things, the four pillars. And beneath that, there's this deep structure, the codex.
Right. And once we navigate that structure, we'll look at the expanded consciousness of the realm. And then finally, we'll look out toward the very edge of what can be sensed, which they term the pull.
Think of this as getting the technical specs for your own consciousness and how it connects to, well, everything. It's super organized, so let's get straight to the foundation. Okay, let's unpack this. We start at the center, what they call the most stable point in this entire universe, the dot. What does the canon actually define as this core of a person?
They call it the central presence. And it's the still point at the very core of your awareness. What's so fascinating about the dot is that in this canon, it comes before everything we usually define ourselves by. It precedes memory, identity, belief, any kind of interpretation.
Wow, so it exists completely outside of our personal stories. It's not the sum of our experiences or the narrative we build about ourselves.
Exactly. The source emphasizes its absolute constancy. It's steady, it's simple, it's exact. And this is crucial. It doesn't need your attention to exist. You don't have to, cultivate it or meditate on it. It's just there.
That seems like a really important distinction. If it's the anchor, what keeps it so stable when everything else is, well, chaos?
The dot is defined by its refusal to change. It's not affected by internal or external turbulence. It doesn't grow with success or shrink with failure or shift with confusion or clarity. It's that quiet presence that allows you to recognize yourself through every state of consciousness, every emotional break, every huge life change. It's the constant I am that's just watching the I feel or I think.
It's that inherent recognition. So even in your absolute darkest moment, the source is saying you can't lose the dot. It's just the thing that recognizes the darkness.
And that stability is the fundamental orientation point for this whole universe. Because the dot is stable, perception can open out from it, connection becomes visible, and love, as we're about to define it, becomes recognizable. It's the foundation of sight itself.
So that stillness anchors us.
Yeah.
But what happens when that core actually interacts with the world? That brings us, I think, to the active experience of life through the four pillars.
Yes, the four pillars. These are the four fundamental ways humans experience and carry life, and they all rise directly from that central stability you mentioned.
This is where the system gets really tangible, applicable to daily life.
Let's start with pillar one, memory.
Okay, and this definition of memory it stood out to me immediately. It's so different from just recalling facts.
That's right. Memory isn't some container for the past. Here, it is the ongoing presence of what has happened. It's active, not something you look back on.
If it's ongoing, it has to be embodied, right?
Yeah.
Where do they say memory lives?
Oh, it's deeply physical and inherited. It lives in your bones, your breath, your posture, gestures. It lives in places in your family lineage. The key insight for you, the listener, is that this memory shapes your perception before thought even arrives.
So it's the lens you're already looking through.
A physical way of seeing the world in this moment, driven by all the moments that came before it.
That's powerful. Explains that feeling of resistance to something new before you can even explain why. Okay, pillar two is presence. And the source insists this is encountered, not cultivated.
And that's a really challenging idea in a world obsessed with mindfulness. Presence here is just the direct, immediate experience of being alive. The source says you are already present. Encountering it just means acknowledging that fact.
But wait, if I'm totally overwhelmed or confused, how can I be present? Isn't trying to pull myself out of that confusion a form of cultivation?
The canon would suggest that the confusion is the encounter. Presence includes it all. Clarity, confusion, overwhelm, tenderness, uncertainty. It's the whole package. It's the totality of your immediate encounter with being alive, without any need to clean it up. The experience is the presence.
Okay. Pillar 3 is light and dark. And this isn't a moral thing, good versus evil.
Not at all. They're presented as twin necessities for perception. Light reveals, it clarifies, it names things. Dark, on the other hand, it deepens, it holds, it envelops what we can't see.
Like photography. You need the light, but you also need the shadow to see the shape.
Exactly. Seeing or knowing only happens where the two meet.
And that brings us to pillar 4, love. And we have to pause here because this definition it's completely radical. Love is not an emotion in this universe.
It is absolutely critical to get that. Love is defined as a field, a connective substance, a constant flow. It only becomes visible when your perception moves outward from that stable center of the dot.
A field. So what does that mean for how we experience it? What does love look like if it's not, intense affection for someone?
It's the structural glue of reality. Experientially, it shows up as the recognition of another center, that resonance between two beings. It's the awareness of this underlying continuity that flows through you, through the person next to you, through the landscape. It's everywhere. When you perceive that substance, you're perceiving love. So we've got the dot as the center and the pillars as the ways we live. Now we go deeper to the architecture that all of that rests on. What's fascinating here is the codex.
I'm seeing the pillars as like the lived experience, the house we live in. So the codex must be the bedrock underneath the foundation, the physics of the system.
Precisely. The codex is the structural ground that makes the dot perceptible and the pillars possible. If you want to understand why reality is built this way, this is where you look.
And it's built on four very complex abstract axes. Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's start with axis first, the unformed.
The unformed is the density that precedes all shape, the field that presses in before anything becomes itself. The source actually calls it the underside of origin.
Like a deep potential sea before the first wave.
Exactly. Vast, inert possibility. And then right after that, you get its opposite. Axis second, the finite.
The finite. So this is about the edges, the boundaries that allow form to exist. Limit. Completion.
Yes, and the source makes this profound argument here. The shape of reality is held by its capacity to end, not in spite of it.
Whoa. So form requires limitation to even be real. That seems to run counter to the whole human drive for permanence, for limitlessness.
It suggests boundaries aren't obstacles. They're the necessary conditions for form. Without a limit, there's no shape. There's just the unformed. The fact that things conclude that they have edges is what makes them real in this universe.
Okay, let's move to axis the third. The broken. Most philosophies treat being fractured or in pieces as a problem to be solved, a temporary state to be healed. Why is it a stable condition here?
This is a total reorientation. Multiplicity, according to the Codex, is the stable condition of being. The experience of being fractured, of holding pieces that don't fit together neatly, that's not a failure of identity. It's the foundational mode of existence.
Unity is the fragile state.
Unity is often the temporary fragile state. The broken is the strong foundation. It means human conflict isn't a bug, it's a feature.
A feature of the deepest structure of existence.
Right. You're built to carry complexity that doesn't resolve. And finally, axis the fourth, the lost.
Erasure, disappearance, the quiet falling away of things. This feels deeply connected to the finite.
It is. Loss is presented as a foundational component of existence, the essential movement through which reality it changes its shape. The structure demands things fall away. And the whole codex unformed, finite, broken, lost gives us the ground rules for every experience we have in the pillars.
So we've anchored in the dot, we've understood our operating modes through the pillars, and we've felt the structural ground in the codex. So now we move outward past ordinary perception into the realm. So what does this all mean? What happens when those tight boundaries of self, defined in the codex, loosen up a bit?
The realm is the expanded field of consciousness, and it's not some separate dimension. It's continuous with life. We just only encounter it when our personal identity softens and awareness widens out beyond its usual shape, when consciousness shifts into a radical openness.
The source material is remarkably non-judgmental about the doorways that lead to the realm. It lists everything from spiritual practice to trauma.
That's because the mechanism is the same. The dissolution of the self-boundary. The list of doorways is it's exhaustive. It captures all these states where the ego, or that normal sense of a hard, separate self, temporarily dissolves.
Can you walk us through some of those? The range is just enormous.
Sure. You have the usual suspects: dreaming, lucid dreaming, deep meditation, near-death states. But the canon equally lists powerful boundary dissolvers like psychedelics, DMT, psilocybin, LSD, and also the extremes of physical or emotional intensity.
Like what?
This includes trauma-induced dissociation, overwhelming emotional collapse, Even sexual climax, specifically that moment of orgasm where the boundary of self just dissolves.
So it's the boundary dissolution that matters, not the cause.
Yeah.
When someone steps through one of those doors into the realm, what are the shifts in perception they report?
Time loosens. It becomes atmospheric, not linear. The body often feels permeable, expanded, even transparent. But the biggest shift is that perception becomes relational, fluid, wider than your personal identity.
You sense a continuity with everything.
With everything you touch, yes. Meaning moves like a tide, connecting things that seemed separate.
So the key takeaway here seems to be that the realm doesn't lift you out of your life. It just reveals the larger continuity your life already belongs to.
That's the critical point. It's just showing you the wider network that the dots and pillars have been existing in all along.
That expansion within the realm brings us to the final element, the pole. If the realm is this wide atmosphere of consciousness, the pole is like the far boundary, the horizon of what you can sense from within existence.
It's the edge of the map, yeah. It's the sensation of nearing a boundary that doesn't fully close.
Weird.
It reveals itself when experience gets right up to the outer limit of human perception, whether that's meditative, physical, or psychic.
We've seen these listed as heightened moments. Where does the canon say this feeling is most acute?
Predictably, in the most profound moments of potential dissolution. The source points to death's final moments, meditative dissolution, profound devotional ecstasy, the deepest visionary states.
The kind you get through psychedelics.
Yes, and importantly, the threshold of orgasm, that moment right before the final release. In all those states, awareness is touching the horizon of form, and this orientation toward completeness becomes perceptible.
So it's not completion itself, it's the sensation of nearing it.
Right. It carries the orientation toward what lies beyond the structural edges of reality, beyond even the finite limits from the codex.
And this capacity, this perpetual leaning toward what hasn't happened yet, that's what the pole makes possible for us.
Exactly. This horizon is the very space where humans form their deepest meanings. The sacred, the divine, the unknown. It's the potential home of religious experience.
So the pole doesn't promise a destination, but it invites wonder. It invites meaning by allowing this orientation toward a completion that hasn't happened.
And you feel it most clearly when your perception is already wide in the realm. The two are fundamentally linked. The realm provides the atmosphere, the pole is the horizon you see from there.
What an incredible schematic of reality we've walked through. Just to recap the whole structure, at the steady core of being is the dot. From there, you get the four pillars: memory, presence, light and dark, and love, which are the modes of lived experience.
And beneath it all stands the codex, that deep structural ground made of the unformed, the finite, the broken, and the lost.
Surrounding all of that opens the realm, the expanded field of consciousness, and at the very far edge of existence is the pole, that open horizon toward completion.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire canon is unified by that definition of love we talked about, the connective substance, the field of resonance flowing through all these layers. This framework isn't just theory. It provides this comprehensive map for interpreting every single phase of life, from the simple quiet steadiness of the dot to the ecstatic dissolution you feel in the pole. It makes sense of both our internal stability and our outward longing.
And that map gives us this profound paradox to think about. We look at Axis the second of the Codex, the finite, which says reality's shape is held by its capacity to end, limits define form, and yet this same structure gives rise to the pole, this foundational human urge for eternal, limitless completion. So if the very structure of reality is defined by its boundaries, how does that foundational truth inform and shape our deepest human urge for that which has no end? It's this spectacular conflict between structure and longing, and that's your deep dive for today.